Okay. I want to give you the opportunity to ask questions. We will come to you all with a microphone if you just raise your hand, and I'll ask you to address your question at somebody. But before that, I just want to ask Ahmed, who is sitting here in the third row, to just, if you don't mind, standing or sitting, whatever you're comfortable with, Ahmed, to tell everyone your story about spending time in prison under the Assad regime.
Good evening, everyone. Before I start to tell my story, I will have something to add also, please.
Okay.
So if we ask ourselves why this all of numbers of refugees and why all this violence? The people, as Barry said, the people lose the trust with the world in general. After 2 years or more than 2 years of peaceful activity, what it called protest and demonstration, and nobody from the world do anything. By example, I'm from a village called, or it's a small city, it's called Al-Atarab. Okay, Al-Atarab, we kicked ISIS before 2 years because we refuse those, sorry to say that, those fuckers. Okay, I will say it, okay? And before around 7 months back, okay, Al-Nusra Front Al-Nusra Front, it's a part of Al-Qaeda, tried to take our village again. And we lost more than 20 of our relatives just only to kick them out because we refuse any military group to control the area. And at the end, now if you go to the media, you will see Atarab attacked by Russian airstrike and the regime airstrike because of terrorists. How we will keep our people, our family, trust with the world? How? If all of us, we know the Russian and the regime, they are liars. They didn't attack any terrorist area, maybe just only 5%, as Vicky mentioned. All attacked area, it's civilian, and the hospitals and schools and bakeries. 2 times I was in Al-Tarab, and I saw it. I saw the bodies mixed with the vegetables in the market. It was at the end of 2014. I saw it. I saw my families, okay, mixed with vegetables. 37 persons, it was on, I can't remember the date. And at the end, we are asking ourselves, why all this number of refugees? This is the reason. This is. For my story, it's similar to each one, I think, each one inside Syria here who are arrested. I was a part of the community or the society inside Syria, and I involved in the revolution from the beginning. Peaceful revolution, just only asking for democracy and freedom and some dignity. That's what we need, okay? By the way, I'm a construction engineer, and I spent most of my life in Bahrain, in Gulf area. I didn't get the money from Qatar, and as the regime said all the time, okay? I have. I start with my colleague just only painting and do like a silent standing protest. That's what we did, okay? And I arrested in the mid of 2012 because we wear a T-shirt, we write on it, or we wrote on it, "Stop killing, we are building home." So I spent 2 months inside the jail, okay? And because I'm lucky, I'm out, okay? If maybe somebody, he will ask how you get out. There is one person killed inside the jail. He's from Lebanon. His name Fadi, I can't remember the name. So that the embassy, they want to come and visit the jail, in addition to some NGOs or human rights We don't know exactly but at that time they came, who doesn't have a clear evidence against him, they release him. So I was the one person. They don't have any clear evidence against me, just only sharing with a protest. I will tell you one of the suffering. Sometime we were 5 or 7 in one room. It's not room, it's a bathroom, because it's tiling everywhere, okay? It's 90 centimeter, multiply 190. How I know? I know the size of the tiles, okay? So I know exactly, I'm civil engineer, okay? So I know exactly. It's 90 multiply 190, exactly. And there is a hole in the corner. This is as a toilet, and the tap above of it. So if anyone he want to go to toilet, he have to do it in front of the others. If you want to drink, you have to bend yourself. Maybe your nose will touch the hole. Sweating all the time, you cannot be wearing anything. You have to be naked, okay? Because after 5 minutes of breathing with 7 persons in tiling area, and it's closed 100%, there is no any windows. We spent 2 days just only to bend the door, which is 2 centimeters from the middle, okay, to keep 1 millimeter for a fresh air. When they call anyone from us for investigation for torching or for beating, it was relief for us, believe me. Believe me, this is exactly how much we, as a Syrian, we suffer from. Maybe if I'm not lucky, I will be one of those. I can imagine how many people right now, okay, in the jail still with regime, or even with ISIS, because I have some friends kidnapped by ISIS, and until now we don't know. From 2 years we're trying to know where is those people, we don't know. So again, I hope the world can do anything, okay, can do something, okay, to stop the war. I said, and I can say again, okay, we have a lot of what it called professionals people. We have a lot of doctors. We have a lot of engineers, teachers, lawyers, okay. Just only please stop the war, okay, and we can rebuild our home by ourselves. We don't need anyone to, okay, thanks until now for your aid, for your NFI. Thank you, Barry, for everything, okay? We know that, but we need more than this, which is stop the violence, stop the war, okay? We can. I'm construction manager again, okay, and the first person who will go back to Syria tomorrow, okay, to do my job, okay? But I'm right now threatened from both sides, okay? I'm stuck in between 2 sides, okay? Those fuckers and the other crazy man who's doing barrel every single day. I'm in touch with my family inside Atarab until now, okay? And they said, oh, okay, the flight on the sky right now, okay? What I can do, okay? What we can do? Just only we are trying to raise our voice a little, okay? Maybe our voice will reach to somewhere. Again, I'm not happy to talk about my family, to speak about my situation. My wife, civil engineer. I have 3 kids. I have 2 daughters. They are playing violin and guitar. And my son, he's professional in football. We are normal people. Why I have to convince the people we are okay? We are okay. I'm Ahmed, okay? And everyone, he can touch me, Fiona, please, okay? Please. We are not a stranger. We are not from the moon. We are normal people. I worked with gold 3 years, from 2012 until 2015. And we did a lot, okay? But I think we need more. thanks for all. Thanks for very Vicky.
Thank you very much. Yeah, sure. All right, guys, so we have got a little time for questions. So just if you'd like to ask a question, I'm going to fall over, and then I'm going to point here. And if you could just direct it at whoever.
Actually, it's not really a question. I'm Motasim. I'm from Syria, from Daraa. I'm a member of Irish Syrian Solidarity Movement and Irish Syrian Community. I'm a refugee too here in Ireland. I would like to share some things with you. When I come today earlier and I read the reality behind the Syrian refugee crisis, I'm a mathematician in the way. I just imagine that the justice is like a man, and this man closed one of his eyes and looking to the other side. In this side, which is hide, we share to growing terrorism, growing the number of victims, growing destroyable, support dictators. We share to kill these children. We share to kill this woman. I am from a town, they called it Karbet Gazala. I'm from Daraa. Karbet Gazala has a big battle there. The regime tried to kill us in many different ways. Barrel bombs, Scott, even that Scott, they called the Scott. In just 3 days, 25,000 people have been enforced to leave their town, to leave their houses, to leave their land, and some of them, they forget their child. Some of them, they forget their document. Some for them, I don't know. I feel my language is poor to explain what's happening there. I saw a lot of people who had been tortured like these people, so I can't really believe, because I have a lot of friends, cousins who had already been in the regime prison, and they have been tortured like this and maybe more. Some people, they are lucky, they have a strong body, maybe they can continue and leave to the prison like what happened with Ahmed. But some of them, no. Some of them, we don't know anything about them. One of my cousins, he has more than 3 years until now. Nobody knows if he's died, if he's still alive, if he's in a prison, if he's in a grave. Nobody knows anything about him. 25,000 people have been separated around the world. I have personally 17, I have my cousins in 17 countries. You can imagine, this is another kind of a victim. This is another kind. What I would really like to say, we need to stand really in front of what happened there. We need to have a clear position about what happened there. We need to highlight these crimes, these war crimes, or the war criminals. I don't know what I should say, but I hope my message could reach some human heart to tell about what's happening there. We try to survive. When I left my town under all these bombs, I had a little child and my wife, she was pregnant. We left the town to another towns, but the barrel bombs are still coming after us. We don't have battle between rebels, or we were in different area and completely far away of the regime and is what he wants, but still we have barrel bombs. So we enforce also to leave to Jordan by bad way and not really in a checkpoint. It's just by border and it's dangerous. And then for Al-Zatari camp. But Al-Zatari camp, it's also another type of prison. It's another type of death. Because there is no human life could grow in there. You know, like I still remember one of my cousin, he had left Syria earlier than me because his name. And I met him there, and he said, and he come to my tent, and he saw a bird, and he said, he shocked and he stopped, and I asked him, why you shocked? He said, this is my first time I see a bird in this area after 8 months. It's a desert and tent, and the weather is completely different between night and day. It's no sausage, it's no really clear water, it's not. So these, and then the countries close their border, all the countries. Even Turkey, it's opened their door, and that's really good. They have more than 2 million, and that's a big number. And now they need to make more conditions to let the people go in there. Jordan, they closed their door, and the people stuck on the border. Lebanon have a lot of problems. I can understand what's happening there. It's a poor country, small population, and then they have a lot of people. They need help. They need everything, and that's, I can understand, but still, these people is victim. These people, they don't really have a choice. Thank you for everything.
Thank you. I'm really, really tight on time, but if we could just get a couple of questions, and maybe I'll group them together. So if we could just take the 3 people here, if you could just ask your questions, and then I'll direct them at people. So go ahead.
Hi, I just want to talk in relation to the refugee crisis, about the Dublin system. What's so great about the Dublin system, I feel like it causes more harm than good, because it's bringing people back to the borders in the Mediterranean.
Yep.
And that's causing more pressure and more trouble there, because you're not letting the people to go and find other opportunities. Where, like, you know, Germany kind of was like, they're not going with that, and they kind of took in more people. So I just want to ask, what's so great about the Dublin system, and should it still be there?
Barry?
Well, it's not great, and it's really just captures the idea that we're saying to Turkey, tough luck, they arrived on your doorstep, we're not going to accept any burden sharing or collective responsibility. It's saying to Greece and to the Balkan countries, tough luck, they arrived there first. And of course, the nature of multilateralism is that on this occasion we support somebody who's under pressure, particularly Turkey and the neighboring countries. Who knows when we will require the support of multilateralism. So Dublin doesn't capture that, the convention. I think that, I wouldn't know for sure, maybe Ambassador Rafa gave a better interpretation, but that it's essentially where you apply for asylum first rather than where you first appear, which is perhaps a way of looking at it that might be a bit more nuanced, if I can say. But I mean, it just certainly isn't suitable for the current situation.
If I could ask the man on the end and then the lady in the second row.
Very quick question to Ambassador, please. What do you think will be Obama's legacy on Syria once he leaves the White House?
Just hold on.
Yeah, well, a challenging, and understand, I'm no longer in the administration. I left in August of 2015, and my particular part was doing everything we can to document and to press for justice in every forum. I'm not someone that was involved in military targeting and in the sort of ways in which we might intervene. To be frank, even though that's not my area of expertise, I think the fact that we failed to establish, for instance, a no-fly zone and an area of Turkey, or an area not of Turkey, but across from Turkey, that was in Syria, that would have been a safe place for people to live, and where humanitarian assistance could have been provided, and where institutions could have been stood up, a little like we had in Kurdistan, even under Saddam Hussein. If we'd had that kind of situation, we could have begun to establish, frankly, a legitimate opposition area. and begin to establish courts. That would have been a tough thing to do, because if you do a no-fly zone, it's not simply a matter of sitting and waiting to be shot at. The way it's done militarily is you have to go in and bomb the entire air defense system of a very powerful country that has strong Russian support. So there would have been bombing, there would have been hundreds of civilian deaths as a result of that kind of operation, and it would have had the appearance of another U.S. intervention like Iraq, and people would have been in the streets saying it's the U.S. problem, sort of like you broke it, you own it. But frankly, a strictly speaking defensive sort of effort to establish a no-fly zone, I think would have been indicated. I think it's still possible, though today, obviously, it risks, a confrontation with Russia and the United States, because obviously the Russian planes, as we see flying over these very zones that have been elsewhere, where you would have such a zone, and you would begin to have that confrontation, so that to the extent people didn't do it because of the dangers of a large-scale conflict, it becomes less difficult now. But in my view, as a non-military individual, and having seen us do it elsewhere, as in northern Iraq, even after 1991, I think that's probably would have been indicated, and the failure to do that, I think, has had its consequences. But on the issue of justice and accountability, and on pushing for that, I think the President and the administration has done well, but have run up against the opposition through the United Nations, but will eventually overcome that.
Okay, I have the lady here, then the gentleman here, and then the gentleman at the front. Okay, lady here in the second row first.
Yeah,
Go
thank
ahead.
you. Valerie Hughes, we're from Irish Syria Solidarity Movement. And it's just getting back to what the Irish, very practical steps that the Irish can do. Because since 2012, we have been saying that we give humanitarian aid. That's the main plank of our policy, giving humanitarian aid. But we know now that humanitarian aid, and we've known for years that humanitarian aid isn't reaching the most needy. We had a Syrian surgeon, a consultant into the Department Joint Foreign Affairs Committee in 2012, who said the aid is not getting to the most needy. But the department still refused to give aid only to the UN and to the Red Cross. But now we see that the aid isn't getting, people are starving. The UN independent panel of experts said in 2014 there were war crimes being perpetrated because of the starvation, the siege, aid not being allowed in. So it's just a pleasure to meet such excellent speakers here, and well done to Goal for organising this. But it's just to give practical steps. We, at the moment, in Irish Syria Solidarity Movement on Facebook, we have a campaign called Breaking the Siege in conjunction with the Syria campaign in the States. And maybe with the election coming here, if people could sign up to that and take practical action, which has been addressed to the UN, Stephen O'Brien, to bring the aid in, because they are authorised to bring it in under UN Security Council resolutions. The other thing is that Ireland is now currently trying to raise the sanctions for Russia. We had our minister over, Sean Sherlock, on the 8th of December, trying to lift the sanctions against Russia. And surely, to God, with all these crimes being perpetrated by Russia at the moment in Syria alone, this is very insensitive. And maybe people could lift the phone to the minister, and that's something practical maybe that we could do. But just finally...
I need to hurry along.
Yeah, sorry, I just wanted to ask the Ambassador, thank you, because it's such a pleasure to have people with such expertise here. If you could explain about the Torture Convention, that we as a group could help to push that, what Ireland could do to end impunity, on specifically what Ireland could do, because we keep saying we want war crimes prosecuted, but we're using it as a fig leaf to avoid being accountable to do anything. I mean, when people are being barrel bombed, as Vicky has said, every day of the week, saying we want war crimes prosecuted is, it's a fig leaf for doing nothing. In Ireland, we've been saying this for 4 years.
Okay, Ambassador, your comment. Thank you.
And understand, under the Convention Against Torture, which Ireland and almost countries ratified back in 1984, a country can pass laws to create universal jurisdiction. I've seen surveys of laws across Europe. I haven't studied the Irish law specifically, but if it's not there, there's no reason that it can't be amended. And that if you have, particularly if you, and understand that from the point of view of legitimacy, it's important to have some tie to a case. But if you have victims here in Ireland of particular torture and survivors of that, and they're prepared to testify, that gives you sufficient grounds to begin a case against the people who ran the prison. They don't have to be your citizens here. They don't have to have been citizens at the time the crime occurred. You can begin that prosecution, and just at the international courts. I mean, we had a wanted poster out for Mladic, responsible allegedly for Srebrenica for 15 years before we had him. That certainly kept his head down.
That happened in Belgium in relation to Rwanda cases.
Yeah, in Rwanda's and other countries, national systems usually prosecute the guy they have. You know, you don't have a very great trial if you don't actually have somebody in custody. And there are some people that are coming in, and we're encouraging some, and there's some pretty nasty characters that we'd like to see prosecuted. But obviously the major ones are still back there doing the crimes. But there's nothing to prevent you from filing those cases. And then those individuals basically, it becomes known that if you're a person like this, you can't cross a border. Your hope of going to visit your relatives, and you may have some in other countries, or visit your money, et cetera, that those possibilities are going to be reduced. And you get an international red notice from Interpol that goes to every police station in the world, et cetera. That sends a signal that there are going to be consequences. Those kind of cases can be put together by prosecution services, and we're ready with evidence, with documents, with all sorts of things that would make that a very, very, very strong case. And that's the message we're delivering to prosecutors, where we definitely have the connections. So far, France is the only one that's actually jumped in and opened a case for these kinds of regime crimes, and their law requires that the perpetrator be found in the country. So they can open the investigation. But if their law were written more broadly, as Germany's, as Spain's, as others is written, you could prosecute it as well. So Ireland, I think, could do this with legislative fix, but it's quite probable, given the Irish attitude on these human rights issues, your law may be adequate right now to do it.
Okay, this gentleman's been waiting, and then I'm really stuck for time, so I just have one final question.
Thank you very much, Goal. I'd like to ask Muaz if he has any specific ideas on how the war or wars in Syria might be brought to an end. Thank you.
Thank you.
The fact is, first of all, one thing that the Caesar team constantly says, and it's important, we mean it, is we don't even want this case to stall or to be an obstacle of any political solution. Everybody wants a political solution and an end to this conflict as soon as possible. But the fact of the matter is the Assad regime believes that they can militarily win. They believed that back in Geneva, in which case if you speak to the UN envoy Brahimi, who came out and said this is the regime, was just unwilling to budge on this. And more so now than ever, knowing that the US and everybody else will do nothing about it, and the Russians are in there in full force as well as the Iranians, believes in a military solution. So without having a negotiating process, without the credible threat of force, I'm not talking about invading the country, no one's talking about ground troops, no one's talking about any of that, but without a credible threat of force and understanding that there are consequences if we do not reach a solution on that, I think we'll stay in a difficult place. And the best way, by the way, to cover a lot of these things, to allow the Syrians to know that the world still cares, to stop the flow of refugees. People want to stay home. Nobody wants to come here or anywhere else. They're forced to do so. And to be able to show the Assad regime that his calculations on the ground, and Secretary Kerry said this during his hearing, that his job was to change the calculations of Assad. Obviously, that was another statement with no action. But to show that things on the ground can change is if you protect civilians from aerial bombardments. And I'm not here to give military prescriptions, and I'm not talking about an all-out thing where you got to go and bomb different things. But to give you one idea, there are 17 military runways where these helicopters take off and drop down, these barrel bombs. Let's say it's $1 million to do one missile to each one of these runways, not in civilian areas, military runways that cause these things. That alone would change dramatically the scenery in Syria and would allow for a political solution to be conducive. So protect civilians, it's the right thing to do, but it also is and aligns perfectly with the national interests and the security interests of Europe, of the United States, and everything else. For once, national interests in our core values in the West actually align, and that's on the protection of civilians that would allow for a solution of the conflict, and that's what I think is the number one step that could really move us in the right direction.
Okay, question here. Thank you.
My question is for you, Ambassador. My name is Captain John F. Quinn. I served overseas in what we can call post-Red Line Syria, I suppose. from 2014 2015 with the UN. In Kenitra province, we saw a lot of the damage and a lot of the violence that we've heard about this evening. My question, you mentioned with favour your country's vote in the Security Council on ICC referral. However, as you may be aware, since the Rome Statute in 1998, the US were initially reluctantly involved in the ICC. The great humanitarian George W. Bush then decided to withdraw from the ICC and actually pursued a foreign policy opposing the ICC wherever he could, negotiating Article 98 agreements with weaker countries, partner countries with the US, bind their opposition to the ICC. My question now, in the last 8 years, President Obama has refused to engage on the topic of US entry and providing leadership to the ICC. Do you think that the next election that we're due to see will tackle this issue, or will they avoid as they have done today?
Well, I do want to correct you in the sense that, and certainly in the context of the ICC, you're completely correct. The United States hasn't joined, and President Obama has not called on the United States to join. But in this administration, we've engaged with the court, actively participated in its assembly as an observer, assisted with its arrest. Its most two recent arrests were made with our assistance of warlords in Africa. We've extended our Rewards for Justice program to include ICC cases. As you know, in the United States, it takes 2/3 vote to pass a treaty. We haven't even ratified the Convention on the Rights of the Child. You know, we're alone with Somalia in the world in not ratifying that. I mean, it's so difficult to get even 51 votes in our Senate for sometimes reasonable policies. And what the United States can do and should do is send a signal that whether we're in the ICC or not, we will enforce these standards on ourselves and prosecute people who commit crimes. We do that to some extent when the Blackwater Guard shot those people down in Azur Square in Baghdad. We prosecuted those guys. Even though they had great service records, they got sentences of 30 years to life for shooting innocent civilians. When Sergeant Bales shot people in Afghanistan, 16 of them on a clear morning, he was sentenced to prison for life. So we do some of that, but we have to uphold these standards ourselves. And obviously, the United States would be more persuasive in these issues if we were a member of the ICC, but that's, frankly speaking, at this stage, not possible. But it's important, however, whether you're in the ICC or not, and obviously Ireland is a leader in these institutions, to make them as effective as possible. You know, we would have loved to have had the ICC take the Syria case, but we know we also could have today had an arrest warrant against Assad like we have against Bashir of Sudan, and it wouldn't be necessarily honored, but that still would be a positive. That still would be a positive move. It would be a statement by the world that there are going to be consequences in the long run. But it's not just enough to have the court. We have to provide the support for it to make the arrest and to bring these people to justice.
Okay, everyone, on that note, can I just ask you to thank our panel? Unfortunately, the clock has beaten me, but thank you for the healthy interest. There are ways you can support all of these organizations, from Ceasar to Goal to the National Coalition of Syria. But for now, can I just ask you in the room to thank Moaz, to thank Barry, to thank Stephen, and to thank Vicky. Thank you, everyone. Make our way out.